What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Project Lioness podcast. This is your host, Dr. Mel, and today I am joined by not only a colleague of mine and a student, a graduate rather, of Project Lioness Cohort, but a woman that's becoming a dear friend and a kindred spirit, Dr. Cillesha. I'm super excited to have her on the podcast, and you'll hear why I invited her on. So before we get into it and share her journey as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a guide, as a leader, and now a Lioness graduate, let me share with you all a little bit about her so you can get the gist of what this woman is all about. So Dr. Cillesha's mission and purpose on the planet is to guide others to optimal health and well-being so that they can experience the beauty of this life through all challenges and blissful moments. She is a chiropractor, a healer, a guide, an entrepreneur, and a business owner. So you entrepreneurs, pay attention to this podcast. She graduated from chiropractic school in December of 2021 from Sherman College and worked as an associate for 7 months in South Carolina. But then she felt the call to move back home to serve and spontaneously quit her job, moved home, and opened Rooted Chiropractic. She serves whole families with the focus on female health and pediatrics. And while not in the office serving or building her business, she is out communing in nature and being a student herself. And she is an amazing student and evolving into a teacher. Dr. Cillesha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So Cillesha and I connected via the good old Instagram. Yes, for, probably a little bit before we actually dove into our kind of working relationship. But I'd love, Cillesha, to hear from you because we have a lot of entrepreneurs and other chiropractors and women who listen to this podcast. So what called you to be a chiropractor? I think a lot of chiropractors have a very interesting journey of what brought them to the profession. So I'd love to hear what called you into this crazy world of chiropractic.
So I want to first say, before I ever went to chiropractic school, I had no idea what chiropractic was, y'all. I always tell people, it chose me, and I just kind of went with it. So when I was young, I grew up in a very small town, and there was not a lot of availability for super healthy things. And I always desired to have more holistic, natural living, but I wasn't shown that. So it was getting older, it was my life's journey to kind of discover that for myself. And when I was in undergraduate, one of my college advisors was like, "Hey, why don't you just try chiropractic?" I was like, "Okay, we'll go with it. That sounds pretty cool." So I looked into it and I was like, "Okay, I'll do this," And granted, I'm from a very tiny town in Kentucky, so I had never lived outside of Eastern Kentucky before in my entire life. So
Cillesha, by the way, just to give the listeners context, when you say small, how small? Because I know you shared with me, but how small are we talking?
Probably less than 20,000 people.
Yeah.
So pretty tiny.
Yep. And you guys can obviously hear it in her voice. I still love your accent. Anyway, yes, small town.
Yep. So I applied for chiropractic school and I got in and I was like, "Okay, do I really want to do this?" And I was terrified. I was like, "I don't think that I'm ready to move away." So I chose to not go at the first time around. And I went to nursing school. Mm-hmm. And I was in nursing school for about 3 semesters. I was like, "This is not for me. I know I'm supposed to do something completely different." So granted, I spontaneously dropped out of nursing school and then went to chiropractic school. And then when I got there, I was like, "I don't know what this is, but I just know that I'm supposed to be here." And really the rest is kind of history. And it's just been an unraveling for the past 6 years of like getting to this moment.
This moment right here. I love that you share that. It shows you, because I do feel like I hear that from a lot of chiropractors where they have no idea that this exists. And I was the same way as you. I did not grow up with chiropractic care. I didn't even really know what it was until I got further into it. And I love that you share that it shows you, even when there was resistance trying to do another path, and yet it still kept knocking at the door. And it reminds me of the saying, when the mission or a vision or a dream or, whatever your soul is trying to birth through you, like it will give you all the signs. And unless when you listen, it can be beautiful, but if you don't, it just can hop to the next thing. So way to listen to the call. So when you got into chiropractic school, were you dealing with any like physical, mental health challenges that you started to notice like in your own healing journey? Because I know that's a big thing. I see people who have never had chiropractic like me and you until they get to school. They all of a sudden start receiving the work and they're like, oh my gosh, like their lives transform. So I'm curious, like if you have any journey in that perspective for your own health and well-being.
Yeah. So before I got into chiropractic school and got like under consistent care, I was so tired, like all the time. My sleep was horrible. I had headaches 24/7. And I was just like, oh, I guess this is just normal life. And I was like 22, I think, when I started chiropractic school. And I thought I was healthy, but all the unlearning began that first quarter in chiropractic school. And I remember when I first started really getting adjusted every single week, just like how, one, I started to feel better, but I noticed my mind changing and like starting to just be more open to like what I was being taught rather than being so like closed off, because I was super closed off when I first got there.
Yeah, that's I hear it's like you have this thought, your ego thinks that you're going to go this one direction, and then all of a sudden chiropractic opens this whole other perspective of life, right?
Yeah.
And you make a good point. I think so many people, especially women, walk around thinking that things are normal. Like, oh, it's just normal to get headaches all the time. It's just normal to be fatigued all the time, even at the young age of 22. And I think chiropractic really opens up this veil. And I know you do this with your clients too, of like what's really possible in life. You don't have to go on this like status quo surviving every day, but you can truly thrive, right? You can truly step into what's possible. And chiropractic is such a beautiful vessel to be able to explore that. Because human beings were designed to thrive, right?
Absolutely.
I love that. So now you've been in practice for what, 2 years?
Yep. This is December will make 3 years I've been in practice.
Yeah. I hope you have a party. That'll be fun. So obviously opening a business is no joke. Any of you listeners and the audience, y'all know whether you're an entrepreneur, you have that entrepreneurial spirit. I've brought a lot of entrepreneurs on this show, and you get to hear behind the scenes because Project Lioness, as you all hear me say, is about bold, real, and raw conversations. And so, Cillesha, I'd love to take that journey with you over the next several minutes to hear what was happening. You and I had met on Instagram, and I believe you had followed me for a while before you're like, all right, I got to talk to this crazy woman, which generally happens. She'll muster up the courage to actually send me a DM, right? But we know entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And I like to say entrepreneurship is the most spiritual fucking journey that I've ever gone on. I don't know if you would agree.
Oh, yes.
But that shit will crack you open. And like you think you've addressed your shadows, not until you start a business. Like it just comes at your face. And it's not even, you guys, from a business perspective, but like all your personal stuff gets brought up, because as much as the business isn't about you, you're the one who's creating this world to serve people. Like oftentimes in the beginning, when you're a solo show, you're seeing the people, you're doing the admin. You're not only the chiropractor, but you're the business admin, you're the front desk. So I would love to hear, Cillesha, like what was that kind of, I don't want to say rock bottom moment, but I know your journey. Like life was challenging before we met. So give us a picture of like, you're into business, what starts to happen? What's going down in your world? Paint that picture for us.
Yeah. So I like, I always say this, but you just like spontaneously showed up on Instagram one day. I was like, who is this girl? And I just felt so aligned with like your message. And that was before you even had launched Project Lioness or anything like that. And so, of course, once you like released the podcast, I had listened to like every episode, and I was just like, man, this is real, because I had been given the picture that entrepreneurship is just this beautiful, wonderful thing. And like, you're going to make all this money and you're just going to grow and serve so many people, and everything's just going to explode as soon as you start doing it. So I had that like mentality, like going into like opening my business. And of course, it's not like that at all.
Not at all.
For the first 6 months, like my practice grew like enormously because I was putting a lot of work into it, and it kept growing and kept growing. And then when I had my first like low month after having like a big month, I was like, oh my God, like I'm a failure. Like there's no way like I can keep doing this, So like it was just this ebb and flow of just like doing really good, not doing good, and like all these challenges that I was not told that I was going to experience. Mm-hmm. So I think it was like come like September or something of last year. I was just like done. I was like, am I even supposed to be in business for myself? Like, do I just like quit and like close up and go get a job to support myself? Because this just doesn't seem like what I'm supposed to be doing. And I was just so stuck. I was stuck in the loop of like chasing things, thinking that it was supposed to be perfect 24/7. And like, it was just going to go straight up. And that's when me and Dr. Mel connected, and she really challenged me to like get out of that loop.
Yeah. We broke some fantasies pretty quickly before it even started. And I want to highlight, Cillesha, a couple of things you said, because that's so powerful. And thank you for like opening up and being raw and real, because if there's any entrepreneur out there who is going to put on this facade as though they've never had those thoughts of like a low month, am I a failure? Am I supposed to do this? Maybe I'll just go get a job at Starbucks, and nothing against that, right? But I would argue every single entrepreneur, even if they're a multimillionaire at this point, even in the beginning, I can guarantee they've had those thoughts. And part of my mission on the planet, and I appreciate you sharing this because it's a fulfillment and a reflection back to me of the fulfillment of my mission, is to have these real conversations of like, guess what? No matter where you're at in your journey, even if you're not an entrepreneur, you're going to have days where those thoughts creep in. And oftentimes those thoughts come from, one, the unrealistic fantasies that we're creating, the expectations, right? The butterflies and rainbows type practice or type business, thinking that nothing's going to go wrong. It's just a straight line. Hello, nothing's a straight line. Or from our root experiences from our past. Something shows up in business, maybe a client leaves, we have a lower month, and all of a sudden, all of our shit from our past starts to come to the surface to be healed. So I appreciate you speaking to that, because I think when people can get that life is not just a one-sided equation, that you're going to go through ebbs and flows, I think that can make the journey more real and honestly more enjoyable when you can learn how to navigate those waves. But I mean, you're reminding me, I had times when I first opened, almost 8 years ago, of like, is this for me? Like I could just quit, and I think that's a very common thing. And you've heard me say this in Project Lioness, like, congratulations, you hit your first roadblock. The journey really begins. So thank you for sharing that. Anything else, like personally or professionally, that was happening, before we started connecting, that feels important to share?
Yeah. So not only just like business wise, but even like personal wise, I was just like so wanting to just dissociate from life, because everything was just so tough. And I was just like, I don't know what to do, and like, not only was I stuck in business, but like I was stuck in just like life in general. I was like, wow, I'm 28 years old or 27 at the time. And I was like, I still don't have my own place, and like, here I am trying to build this business, and I feel like I'm stuck in that. And it's just like, it was just so much stuff just like coming at me at once. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. So I was just like, dissociate. I'm just not going to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's that freeze response, right? And in Project Lioness, we go over the nervous system 101. And that's so common in entrepreneurs because there's so much pressure, right? Like not only trying to run a business and serve people, but also show up for your family, for your partner, your home life. And sometimes it's just easier to collapse and try to forget or numb out, and that doesn't help us in the long run. So, it's really courageous of you to, even in that state, you're like, all right, something's got to be different. And one thing that I teach people, and you guys on the podcast have maybe heard me say this, but it's not always the business itself. It's either one, how you're doing the business, right? How you're actually connected to it, or usually, have you actually connected what you're doing to your values and your zone of inspiration, right? So it's not necessarily like the business itself, but rather how you're showing up in the business. And we can alter that, that can be a game changer, which is a lot of what I teach in Project Lioness, you guys, is like reinvigorating your inspiration for what it is you're doing, or really checking yourself. Like, is this in alignment with my values, or is it not? Is this pressure from someone else or from people that we subordinate to, or authority figures, or, maybe our parents told us we need to do something, but we're really not inspired by it. So now it's September or maybe December. I think we had our call, December 2023?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember sitting in the back of my office and we had your discovery call, and you had the courage to be like, all right, I got to do something different. Like, I know this is my mission. This is my calling. In that call, or from that moment forward, what started to shift for you?
Literally everything. Because, you didn't let me sit my shit at all. You really didn't. I had this story, this big story, and you're like, okay. And you just really got me to see, it doesn't have to be this way. You can choose to do something different. And it was really all about trust. And I was just like, okay, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to get from Project Lioness. I don't know what I'm going to get from Dr. Mel, but I just know that I'm supposed to show up and be here and do this. Mm-hmm. So I just trusted you, and I just kind of like let go of that story and just started doing the work. Like, I didn't know what my highest values were. I didn't know like any of that. I was just like, I didn't know who I was truly. And I just started from there, and I started getting more in alignment with myself, and everything just kind of like started unraveling. And I was able to like kind of move through fears a lot easier, even before we started like really working together.
Yeah. I feel like, if I remember correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the first exercise I gave you, even from your discovery call before the cohort even started, was to look at the benefits of your practice slowing down. Mm-hmm. And benefits of you having a little bit more space and having gratitude for that, rather because that's a big thing that entrepreneurs face, right? They're like, oh my gosh, the business is slowing down, the numbers are lower, like, ah. And one thing I teach y'all in Project Lioness is like how to flip those perspectives and learn how to actually have gratitude for the other side. And what Cillesha is really speaking to y'all is actually loving yourself, like loving your life exactly how it is. Because if you have resistance or resentment or guilt or shame or judgment, you're not going to expand past those stories. And so when we clear and recalibrate those stories and we start to look at the divinity of what's happening now, you actually expand into your greatness. It's not chasing these fantasies. I think I maybe had you look at too, like breaking those fantasies of thinking where you should be versus gratitude where you are, which is actually like the secret sauce to be able to expand into your greater vision and mission. And you took that, my friend, and like you've heard me say this, but you're a phenomenal student, and you showed up and you did the work even after the first call. Things just started flowing before the cohort, which was really, really inspiring. So yeah. Come March then 2024 of this year, depending on when you guys are listening to this, we started the cohort, and I don't think you missed a call. Right? Yeah. You, even when we shifted timelines or shifted days, I don't think you missed a call. So throughout the journey, what were some of like your biggest takeaways? And then we'll share like what you've noticed transform, like personally, professionally, different areas of your life. But what if there's someone in the audience or a listener curious about, okay, what what's possible here, what's available here. What would you say in your eyes and your perspective and your values have been some of your biggest takeaways going through this journey of committing to yourself and personal transformation?
The biggest thing that I have just like noticed within myself and like really learned over the past like 8 months or so that we've worked together is the biggest common denominator in everything in your life is you. So taking care of you and putting that work into yourself allows you to show up so differently in the world. Because if you don't know you and you don't know how to like be in alignment with yourself or whatever, you can't show up how you actually want to show up and serve others in this world.
What would you say to someone, if I were to be like, well, how can I get over that feeling selfish, right? Because I think entrepreneurs feel like they have to, especially chiropractors, we have big hearts. We like to serve, give, and oftentimes at the fault of our own receiving. Share maybe one or two things of like, how can people start to get over this fact of like, well, I don't want to be selfish, right? Or I don't want to take, like, how can we start to flip that narrative of like giving to you? How does that actually benefit like the practice or the business? Because that's a big thing I see is people feel like they can't receive because they think that they're going to be egotistical or selfish, like a narcissist, right? I agree with you 100%. Love to hear, you're a graduate now, so you've got some wisdom. If I was someone and I was like, well, how do I get over that fact? What would you share with them?
I mean, first of all, we all have those aspects about ourselves, right? So it's just like not being polarized to like one side and finding the balance between all of that. And it's your life, and if you put the time and energy into yourself, you can also share that with everybody else around you. Because even in my own life, just by taking care of me, investing in myself, and doing all of this work, it is impacting literally everybody around me. And it's changing their life because I can show up differently for them. And they can take that and just like transform their life. And it's just so amazing to watch.
The ripple effects, right? Thank you for sharing that. What have been some of those tangible outcomes that you've seen, whether it's your practice, your clients, your family, friends, partner, what are some tangible outcomes that you've experienced day to day that feel like you are truly creating this life that you have maybe thought of, but stepping into more as a reality?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am able to show up and hold space so differently for my clients and serve them in a whole new capacity. And because of that, like, of course, my business is growing and I get to meet all kinds of new people and serve all kinds of new people. And, I can hold space for my family differently, but also simultaneously like create those boundaries for myself and not feel guilty about it. And then just being able to bring this work and share this work with my partner, like it's completely also transforming his life.
And I know you've had some other opportunities pop up, right, to expand your business or in the community, or some speaking opportunities emerge. And this is a speaking opportunity, you could say.
Yeah, that was another thing that like popped up. I remember before we had even started the cohort, and it was right after our first call, like that discovery call. And I was like so stuck in like how to make money, right? Because that's what entrepreneurs are worried about.
Yep.
And you were like, maybe you should just expand outside of your town. And I'm like, that's a good idea. And then I kid you not, like 2 weeks later, I had somebody reach out to me to do that. So like, I just like when you're open to things and you just like approach it with like a curiosity, it just kind of like shows up. And then you can choose to do that or not to do that, whatever, like choosing what's best for you and what's in alignment with like your true like values, but also like just your mission and your vision.
Well said. Very well said as a graduate. I think let's highlight that for a moment. A lot of people, when we're stuck in those stories, can feel like life is very black and white. and we're operating from the amygdala. And it isn't until we start to get out of that fight or flight state, out of our amygdala, out of the polarized black and white thinking, till we, then can access our higher brain, which allows, well, what if, right? What if I called in other resources or people or financial resources from a different place that I never even thought of? But sometimes we don't have access to those thoughts, even if we don't have a guide or a mentor to kind of call us out on our bullshit, right? Or two, we've been running a story and a program in our nervous system that's literally just keeping us trapped in that black and white kind of amygdala, brainstem, fight or flight. The world's out to get me. There's no possibility. This is just how it is. And I think to reflect back to you, your willingness to show up despite fear, show up and do the work, do the homework, stay open, not even know what you're getting, is a testament to that's always been in you. We just had to open it up, right? That part of you has always been who you are. And my guess is probably what called you into chiropractic, even through maybe some questioning of it, I'm sharing this and reflecting back to Cillesha. For those of you listening to this, consider what reality you're living doesn't have to be, whether you're fulfilled in it or not, doesn't have to be the continued story. And let her story inspire you. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, let her story inspire you to be like, yeah, what if I just stepped into it? Because my friends, fear is not going away. I'm here to tell you that fearlessness is not a thing. Sure, you can mitigate and dissolve fear in certain concepts and transmute it into courage, but it's not going to go away. So how are you going to learn to navigate it when you step into those bigger opportunities, right? And again, what Cillesha's saying is when you shift your frequency into loving yourself, loving your life, seeing the divinity of what is now, those possibilities start to magnetize towards you. But if you're in a state of resistance and your frequency is, this is my reality and it's not going to change, do you think that you're going to magnetize that as much? Probably not. And we talk about the science of this in our cohort. So I appreciate you sharing and teaching to that. So you're teaching all these people today, right? So since the cohort there's been personal growth, it sounds like, relationship growth, business growth. And I know you don't have to go into numbers, but I know your business has definitely exploded, which is amazing. That's an outcome of loving yourself more. Since you've graduated, what's next for you? What's inspiring you? What are you being called into as an entrepreneur and a healer and a leader in your community?
Really just taking all this wisdom, this whole world that has been opened up to me, and just how it really explains the mastery of life, essentially, and getting to share this with my community and getting to serve clients in a new way, but also just kind of expanding out of that. Of course, I want to be able to teach all of this stuff because it has absolutely transformed my life. And I want to be able to bring that to so many more people, because there's a lot of people who have no idea that this world even exists, before I had ever discovered you or any of this stuff, I was in the self-development world, right? It was all the think better thoughts, positive thinking, all affirmations, visualizations, and can that serve? Absolutely, because it kind of led me to here. But I found myself getting stuck in that too. I'm just this is not working. What? There has to be more than just this, because this just doesn't seem to be working for me. So just speaking to that, knowing that there is more depth to it. And what I love that you teach too is we are human beings. We have a human body and we live in this physical reality. And learning how to navigate this physical reality and this humanness that we get to experience is such an important aspect. It's just not the spiritual piece. I think people tend to forget that.
Yeah. It's so fun and such an honor as a guide and a mentor to watch you blossom and to have seen you be in this cocoon for the last well, I know the cohort's 16 weeks, but I know it's been longer than that to really come into yourself more and love yourself, and then just immediately desire to serve people. Because that's what doctor means, right? In Latin, Sarah, to teach. And it's so amazing to watch your ability to assimilate this information and then immediately apply it to want to serve others, right? I mean, that I think is the true human experience, is how do we, one, end suffering in thyself? And then it's a natural instinct to want others to be fulfilled, because when other people are around us are fulfilled alongside you, that only makes the world a more balanced place. I don't want to say necessarily better, but a more fulfilled place. And in fulfillment, there's going to be chaos, and there's going to be perceived positive things and perceived negative things, but how do we come back to that center? So I just want to reflect back to you how amazing it's been to watch you just apply this information. And like we keep saying, showing up and doing the work and doing the hard stuff and really bringing it into your life. Because that's what I think can separate people from staying in their story to actually creating the life they want, is taking that action, taking that value aligned action. So you're a badass, my friend. Seriously. And it's just so fun. Every week there was like a breakthrough for you or an insight, and your commitment to sharing that bettered the community. And I know betters the community that you serve. Your ability to be vulnerable and show up as a leader and be able to pour into other people, even while we're works in progress, right? Because we're never going to be ready. There's never going to be a point, y'all, where you're like, okay, now I'm ready to teach, or like, now I've mastered it. Mastery, my friends, is a never ending game until you die. And so if you wait until you're ready, or until you've mastered the game, you're going to be waiting a long time. And there's going to be a lot of lives on the line who need you exactly as you are right now. And guess what? Then you evolve to the next version of yourself. And there's new people who step in, as Cillesha's sharing, right? Like attracting different clients, even serving different communities in her state. So anyway, I digress. I just wanted to reflect to you like what I've seen in you. And it's an honor when students really take this seriously, and you created the transformation. I didn't do anything special. I held the container for what I know is possible for people. So thank you for showing up and creating that metamorphosis for yourself.
Thank you for guiding me and sharing all your wisdom.
You're welcome. It's my highest value. So, all right, my friend, anything else to add? If people are like, what is this Project Lioness thing? Like I'm kind of vibing with it. What would you share with them as someone who's graduated and done the work? What would you share with people who maybe are curious? Maybe they have their own skepticism or their own blocks or stories or resistance. Because I know some of you listening, like I see my DMs, I see my emails. I know you guys are like, there's interest. Project Lioness is still kind of in its infancy. But it's definitely growing. So what would you share, Cillesha, because I may be biased, but what would you share as a graduate to people who are maybe have that curiosity or some resistance, like to joining the next cohort in 2025?
Just be open. And like, if you're curious, then connect with it, connect with one of the graduates, because like I said, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I was going to get out of it. I had no idea. I didn't really even though I had been following like Project Lioness for over a year since you started it, I was like, I truly didn't know what I needed from it until I kind of like got into it. So just, kind of like show up personally, just do it, just show up and do it. But you have to, I guess not have to, you can choose to come and be committed to the work. And there is challenges with it. Absolutely. Like I devoted 16 weeks of my life and like I altered my schedule and like made my schedule more limited to not see clients in order to do this for myself. So while yes, I had all this amazing and wonderful transformation, of course it doesn't come without challenge.
It's important to be balanced in that, right? Not have it be super infatuated or oh my gosh, everything's going to be great and it's going to be hunky dory. Most of the time, like these, programs are meant to bring up your shit. And even with you, and I think you are a perfect like embodiment of the ability to create that time for yourself for the calls and for a one-on-one work, and your business still grew, cutting hours, y'all. So like, I think entrepreneurs go into this like, oh, if I cut back hours, I'm not going to see as many people. I'm not going to make as much money. Guess what? That doesn't have to be a reality. In fact, you probably will make more because you're being more diligent with your time and energy in your calendar. I love that. I love that. And it sounds like, Cillesha, you are open to, if people are curious, I can connect them with you. Yes.
Yes. Yep.
And I know I have some other graduates who are very open to that as well. So you heard it from her, y'all. Anything else, Cillesha, that you'd like to share as we wrap up our conversation?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you. I see you, and it's an honor to have witnessed you and guided you in rising into your greatness. And as I keep telling you, this is only the beginning. And I am so excited to see what you're going to create on the other side of this and all the people that you are serving and will serve into the future.
Yes.
Cool. All right, everyone. Well, this is Dr. Mel and Dr. Cillesha. I will put some of her information in the show notes. If you somehow end up in Kentucky, or maybe who knows, you'll see her speaking on stages or hosting teachings and retreats. You never know, right? I'll put her information in the show notes. And you've got some classes coming up, right? Is that?
I do, yeah. So within my my practice, I'm starting to teach like free like Zoom classes, sharing all my wisdom.
Love it.
I've had a lot of requests for that, so here we go.
Here we go, baby. Here we go. You become a teacher. So we'll put that in the show notes, you guys. You can follow her on the social medias. And thank you again, Cillesha, for being here and just being who you are. It's truly a gift, and you are a gift to this planet.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, everyone. We will see you in the next episode. Peace, love, and keep inspiring. Bye. Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.